For 20 years, the people of Bellmere had watched the great, white beast limp through the northern forest. Every winter, his enormous paw prints appeared in the snow, for deep marks, followed by the crooked drag of a leg that had never healed. Royal healers had tried everything: herbs, braces, blades, ancient medicines. Nothing worked. Then, one freezing afternoon, a young village healer named Mara followed his tracks into the forest. She expected to find a monster. Instead, she found an old, exhausted beast lying beneath a dead pine, trembling with every breath. And when Mara looked at his leg, she realized something that made her blood run cold. It had never healed incorrectly by accident. Someone had deliberately broken it. Someone had made sure it stayed broken for 20 years. She should have run. Instead, Mara knelt in the snow. The beast could have torn her apart. He didn't. He lowered his enormous head and allowed her trembling hand to touch the scar that had haunted him for half his life. By sunset, something impossible happened. For the first time in 20 years, the beast stood on all four legs. The soldiers who found them could barely believe their eyes. But Mara wasn't celebrating, because beneath the old scar, she had discovered something else, a piece of royal steel buried inside the bone. And when the Alpha King arrived demanding to know how a poor village girl had done what his greatest physicians could not, Mara refused to answer, because she had just realized the beast wasn't the only one carrying an old wound. He was carrying the memory of a murder. And somehow, he had remembered who did it. For 20 years, the people of Bellmere had watched the white beast limp through the northern forest. In winter, when the snow covered the ground so completely that the world seemed made of nothing but white earth and black trees, his tracks could always be found. 4 deep paw prints. Then 3. Then the long crooked drag of his left hind leg. The trail never changed. Children were told not to follow it. Hunters were warned not to approach it. Old women sitting beside warm stoves would lower their voices whenever his name was spoken, as though even a whisper might carry through the chimney and reach the forest. They called him the White Beast. Some said he was a spirit. Others said he was a monster left behind by the War of Ashes. The oldest people remembered something different. They remembered a young white wolf running beside a prince. They remembered a beast that had once guarded the royal family. And they remembered the night he disappeared. After that night, the white beast was never seen walking properly again. Every winter his limp became worse. Every spring he vanished deeper into the mountains. Every autumn he returned. And nobody could explain why. The royal healers had tried. They had brought him medicines from southern kingdoms. They had built iron braces. They had used knives to reopen old wounds. They had burned herbs beneath his nose and forced bitter mixtures between his teeth. Some had chained him down. Others had attempted to break the damaged bone again and set it properly. Nothing worked. The beast survived. But he never healed. Then, one afternoon in the 21st year, Mara Vale walked into the forest carrying a basket of roots. She did not know that by sunset the kingdom would begin asking questions no one had dared ask for 2 decades. She did not know that a king would summon her. She did not know that a murderer would eventually fear her. She only knew that the winter cough had returned to old Mistress Hale's lungs, and the woman needed marshroot before nightfall. Mara pulled her wool cloak tighter around her shoulders as she walked beneath the pines. Snow fell softly through the branches. Not heavily. Not yet. Just enough to cover her footprints almost as soon as she made them. The forest smelled of cold bark, wet earth, and the faint sweetness of pine resin. Her boots sank ankle-deep into the snow. The basket on her arm grew heavier with every step, filled with roots, dried leaves, and small bundles of herbs she had gathered along the way. Mara was 24 years old. She was not tall. She was not particularly strong. There was nothing about her that would have made a stranger turn around and look twice. Her brown hair was usually tied loosely at the back of her neck. Her hands were rough from work. Her cloak had been patched at both elbows. The leather on her boots had been repaired so many times that Mara could no longer remember what the original color had been. But she had her father's eyes. Quiet eyes. Observant eyes. Eyes that noticed things other people walked past. Her father had been Bellmere's healer. He had died 6 winters earlier. Before he died, he had taught Mara something she never forgot. A body remembered. A bone remembered how it had been broken. A scar remembered what had cut it. And an animal remembered the hand that hurt it long after the wound closed. Mara had never understood why he repeated those words so often, until she saw the tracks. She stopped. The forest had gone strangely quiet. There were no birds, no squirrels, no distant crack of branches. Only wind moving high above her through the pine needles. Mara looked down. The tracks crossed the narrow path in front of her. They were enormous. She crouched. 4 toes. Deep claw marks. The paw was almost as wide as her palm. And beside it was the unmistakable dragging mark of a hind leg. Mara's fingers hovered above the print, without touching it. The snow around the track was fresh. The beast had passed perhaps minutes earlier. She should have turned around. Every sensible person in Bellmere would have turned around. Instead, Mara slowly stood. The basket on her arm suddenly felt very light. She followed. The trail led away from the village, deeper into the trees, across a frozen stream, up a narrow slope where the snow had gathered against the roots of ancient pines. Mara walked for nearly half an hour before she heard something. A low sound. Not a growl. Not exactly. A breath. Deep. Uneven. Painful. She stopped behind a tree. The sound came again. Mara moved around the trunk and saw him. The white beast lay beneath a dead pine. He was larger than any wolf Mara had ever seen. His fur was white, though age had turned parts of it gray around his muzzle. Old scars crossed his shoulder. Another disappeared beneath the fur along his ribs. But his hind leg was what held Mara's attention. It was twisted slightly inward. The paw rested at an angle that no healthy leg would allow. Every few seconds the beast tried to shift his weight. Every time he did, a tremor ran through his body. Mara stopped breathing. His pale eyes opened. One was clouded with age, the other fixed on her. For several seconds, neither moved. Mara slowly lowered her basket. The beast's ears moved backward. His lips lifted slightly. Mara stopped. She did not reach for a knife. She did not run. She simply lowered herself onto one knee in the snow. The wind moved through the trees behind her. The beast watched. Mara looked at his leg, then at his face, then back at the leg. Something was wrong. Not simply damaged. Wrong. The swelling was not where she expected it to be. The muscle had adapted around the injury. The paw was turning outward to compensate. And beneath the thick fur, Mara could see a line of scar tissue that ran much higher than the visible injury. She whispered almost to herself. That happened a long time ago. The beast's ears shifted. Mara reached slowly into her basket. She removed a small piece of dried willow bark. The beast watched her hand. She placed it on the snow. Then another. Then another. She was not feeding him. She was showing him that her hands were empty. The beast's head lowered. Mara waited. A minute passed. Then another. Finally, he moved his head toward her. Mara did not touch him. She let him decide. His nose came within inches of her hand. His breath warmed her fingers. Mara felt the trembling in his body. It was not fear. It was pain. She looked again at his leg. Who did this to you? The beast could not answer. But his eyes changed. For one strange moment, Mara felt as though he understood the question. She carefully moved closer. The beast did not move away. That was when Mara noticed something half-buried beneath the moss beside him. Iron. She brushed away the snow. A broken metal brace lay beneath the roots. Old. Rusting. But still carrying a shape she recognized. A royal wolf. The mark of the Alpha King's household. Mara's heart began beating faster. Her father had once told her that royal medicine was not always better medicine. At the time, she had thought he meant herbs. Now she wondered whether he had meant something else. She reached beneath the beast's fur and felt along the old scar. The moment her fingers touched the damaged area, the beast stiffened. Mara froze. His muscles tightened beneath her hand. Then he slowly relaxed. Mara's fingertips moved along the bone. There. A ridge. a place where the bone had healed at an unnatural angle. She understood. The leg had not simply been broken. It had been set incorrectly. Perhaps 20 years ago. Perhaps by someone who did not know what they were doing, or someone who knew exactly what they were doing. A horn sounded in the distance. Mara's head snapped toward the trees. Another horn answered. Then another. Royal hunters. The white beast raised his head. His entire body changed. He tried to stand. His injured leg folded beneath him. Mara instinctively reached out. Don't. The beast stopped. Hooves thundered somewhere beyond the trees. Mara looked at the enormous creature beside her. Then at the approaching riders. She knew what would happen. The hunters would see a dangerous animal. They would draw their weapons. The beast would run. Someone would panic. Someone would throw a spear. And 20 years of suffering would end in blood. Mara stood. She should have moved away. Instead, she stepped between the beast and the trees. Her heart hammered. The first riders appeared through the snowfall. Steel flashed. Horses reared. A dozen soldiers raised their weapons. Then their commander saw Mara. He pulled his horse to a stop. The forest became silent again. Mara looked beyond him. The commander wore the crest of the Alpha King. And beneath the white beast's fur, where her fingers had just touched the old scar, she suddenly noticed another mark. A narrow line, perfectly shaped, almost like a symbol, a royal execution mark. Mara's blood went cold. The beast had not merely been wounded. Someone had tried to kill him. And somehow, 20 years later, he was still carrying the evidence. The soldiers did not move. Neither did Mara. Snow landed on the shoulders of their dark cloaks. One horse snorted and stamped its hoof against the frozen ground. The white beast remained behind Mara. She could feel his breathing against her back. Slow, heavy, controlled. The commander lowered his sword slightly. His eyes remained fixed on the animal. Step away from him. Mara did not. The commander frowned. I said step away. Mara looked at the beast's leg. If he stands now, he may fall. The commander glanced toward the soldiers. They exchanged nervous looks. One of them whispered the creature's name. Frostfang. The name passed through the clearing like a cold wind. Mara looked back. Frostfang, the legendary companion of Prince Rowan. The beast from the old stories. The creature who had vanished after the prince's death. Captain Edrin dismounted. He approached slowly. Frostfang's ears flattened. Edrin stopped immediately. I remember him, the captain said quietly. Mara looked at him. You were here 20 years ago? Edrin's expression hardened. I was young. He looked at Frostfang. He was younger. For a moment, something almost like grief crossed his face. Then it disappeared. Move away. Mara shook her head. Not yet. Edrin's jaw tightened. You are standing between a royal soldier and an animal that has killed men. He won't hurt you. You cannot know that. I can. Edrin stared at her. Mara looked down at Frostfang. He is in pain. That answer seemed to unsettle the captain more than anything else. He finally lowered his sword. Send for the royal physician. One soldier rode away. Mara returned her attention to Frostfang. The beast's breathing had quickened. She could feel the tension in his body. She placed her palm gently against his shoulder. Stay still. His ear turned toward her. The soldiers watched in silence. Mara opened her basket. She removed willow branches, soft leather, moss, a small knife, and several bundles of herbs. She worked slowly, never rushing, never forcing. Whenever Frostfang's muscles tightened, she stopped. Whenever his breathing slowed, she continued. She cleaned the old wound first. Beneath the fur was a history of pain. The scar was thick, hard, uneven. Mara traced it with her fingertips. Then she felt something beneath the skin. Metal. Her eyes narrowed. There's something inside. Captain Edrin moved closer. What? Mara shook her head. Don't touch him. She carefully exposed a tiny fragment. Blackened metal, corroded by years of blood and moisture. She held it between her fingers. Edrin stared. That is spear metal. Mara looked at him. Royal spear. His silence was answer enough. The royal physician arrived before either could say more. Lord Corvin was dressed in dark blue robes trimmed with silver. His beard was carefully groomed. His hands were spotless. He looked at Mara as though she were something unpleasant on the floor. Then he looked at Frostfang. Impossible. Mara said nothing. Corvin stepped closer. The creature should have died years ago. Frostfang growled. Corvin stopped.
Mara noticed something.
The beast did not growl when Edrin approached. He growled at Corvin. Only Corvin. The physician's face tightened. Bind him. 3 soldiers moved forward. Frostfang rose suddenly. His injured leg buckled. Mara caught his neck with both hands.
No.
The beast trembled. Mara leaned against him. Easy. The soldier stopped. Corvin stared at her. What are you doing? Trying to keep him from falling. You are not a physician.
No.
Then you will allow me to work. Mara looked at his medicine pouch. She saw the bottle he was preparing. She recognized the scent. A swelling suppressant. But not for this injury. Used incorrectly, it would mask the pain while allowing the damaged joint to collapse further. She pushed his hand away. Corvin's eyes flashed. You dare? Mara did not answer. She began preparing her own treatment. She soaked cloth in warm water, crushed willow, ground comfort root, mixed the herbs with a little honey. Then she waited. Frostfang lowered himself. Mara touched his leg. His breathing slowed. The forest grew quiet. She could hear every movement, every breath, every tiny shift of muscle. Mara closed her eyes. She remembered her father. Not his face.
His hands.
The way he had once held the leg of an injured hunting dog while teaching her to feel the difference between a fresh break and an old one. Don't fight the body, he had told her. Listen to it. Mara opened her eyes. She listened, and then she understood what had to be done. The old bone was twisted, not shattered, not dead.
Wrong.
She placed her hands carefully around the joint. Frostfang stiffened. Mara waited. Then she moved. A tiny adjustment. The beast exhaled. Another. His claws dug into the snow. Mara stopped. Almost. She continued. The sound was small. A dull click. Frostfang suddenly relaxed. Mara looked at his paw. It had shifted. For the first time, it rested flat against the ground. Nobody spoke. Corvin's face had gone pale. Mara built the brace. Willow branches formed the frame. Soft moss protected the skin. Leather held everything together. She worked until the sun began to sink behind the mountains. The light turned gold. Snowflakes became sparks. Frostfang lay beneath the pine. Mara sat beside him. Captain Edrin watched. Corvin watched. Every soldier watched. Then Frostfang moved. His front legs pushed against the snow. His shoulders rose. His body trembled. Mara stood. Easy. The beast lifted himself higher. For a moment, his injured leg hovered above the snow. Then it touched. The paw landed flat. Frostfang stood. On all 4 legs. Captain Edrin stepped backward. One soldier dropped his spear. Corvin whispered something that nobody heard. Mara stared. She had expected improvement. Not this. Frostfang took 1 step. Then another.
No drag.
No collapse. No crooked trail. 20 years of pain seemed to vanish beneath his paws. He walked 3 steps. Then 4. Then turned toward Mara. She could not speak. The beast lowered his head. His nose touched her shoulder. Mara closed her eyes. For the first time that day, she smiled. Then Frostfang turned toward Blackthorn Keep. His ears lifted. His body became rigid. A deep growl rolled through the forest. Captain Edrin looked toward the fortress. What does he remember? Before anyone could answer, a rider came charging through the trees. He carried a royal seal. He dismounted and fell to 1 knee. By order of King Aldrin, the healer Mara Vale is to be brought to Blackthorn Keep immediately. Mara looked at Frostfang. The beast moved closer. The soldier reached for Mara's arm. Frostfang stepped between them. His newly healed leg planted firmly into the snow. The message had been delivered. But nobody had yet realized that the beast was not following Mara to the king. He was leading her toward the truth. The journey to Blackthorn Keep took 2 days. Mara rode in a small royal wagon through valleys where the snow reached the horse's knees. Frostfang followed. He never came close enough for the soldiers to touch him. During the day, he remained among the trees. At night, his pale shape appeared beyond the firelight. Sometimes Mara saw his eyes between the trunks. Sometimes she saw only his tracks. But every morning, when the guards prepared to leave, Frostfang was waiting. Captain Edrin noticed. He said nothing. On the second morning, Mara stepped outside the wagon and found him sitting on a ridge above the camp. His white fur was silver beneath the dawn. She looked at his hind leg. Still straight. Still strong. You followed us. Frostfang blinked. Mara smiled. Of course you did. The fortress appeared before noon. Blackthorn Keep had been built into the mountain itself. Dark stone walls rose from the cliffs. Towers disappeared into low clouds. Ancient wolf carvings watched over the gates. Massive banners hung from the walls, each bearing the crest of a different Alpha King. Mara had never seen anything so large. Yet the first thing she noticed was not the fortress. It was the silence. People stopped talking when she passed. Servants looked at her. Soldiers whispered. And when Frostfang entered the lower courtyard behind her, the entire keep seemed to hold its breath. King Aldrin was waiting. He stood at the top of the stone steps. He was younger than Mara expected, perhaps 40. His dark hair was touched with gray. His face carried the tiredness of a man who had spent too many years sleeping badly. His eyes went immediately to Frostfang. For several seconds, the king said nothing. Then, he descended the steps. Frostfang. The beast looked at him. Aldrin's expression changed. He looked almost like a boy. He remembers. Mara watched him. You knew him. My brother did. Prince Rowan. The king nodded. A shadow crossed his face. Rowan called him his shadow. Mara glanced at Frostfang. He was injured the night your brother died. Aldrin's eyes sharpened. Who told you? No one. She looked at the beast's leg. I saw. The king studied her. How did you heal him? Mara lowered her eyes. I treated the injury. That is not what I asked. I know. Aldrin waited. Mara said nothing. The king's physician stood behind him. Lord Corvin. His face remained calm, but his eyes did not. They stayed fixed on Mara. Aldrin finally stepped aside. Bring her inside. Mara was taken to the royal infirmary. The questions continued. What herbs? What technique? Who taught her? Why had she succeeded? Mara answered only what she could. Her father's name came up. The moment she spoke it, Corvin's expression changed. Only slightly. But Mara saw it. Her father had known him. That night, Mara could not sleep. Frostfang lay outside her chamber. She heard his breathing through the door. She opened it. He looked up. Do you remember Prince Rowan? Frostfang watched her. Mara sat beside him. You don't have to answer. The beast rested his head against the stone. Mara ran her fingers through his fur. He loved you. Frostfang closed his eyes. Mara felt something tighten inside her chest. The next morning, she entered the royal archive. She searched through records until her fingers became black with dust. At last, she found them. Drawings. Frostfang 20 years earlier.
Young.
Powerful. His leg perfectly healthy. Beside him stood Prince Rowan, a handsome young man with the same eyes as Aldrin. Mara turned the page. The official record stated that Frostfang had been injured during a bridge collapse. Mara stared at the drawing. Then she remembered the scar, the spear fragment, the execution mark. It made no sense, unless the record was a lie. She searched deeper. At the bottom of one old medical report, she saw a familiar name. Elias Vale. Her father's signature. Mara's hands began to shake. Her father had treated Frostfang. He had known. The question was why he had never told her. She found Tomas in the kitchens. He was old. His hands shook as he carried a tray. When Mara mentioned Prince Rowan, he dropped a cup. The sound of porcelain breaking echoed across the kitchen. Tomas stared at her. You should leave this alone. Mara crouched to pick up the pieces. My father knew. Tomas looked toward the doorway, then back at her. He tried to save the beast. What happened? Tomas swallowed. That night, the prince was not alone. Who was with him? Tomas looked frightened. Before he could answer, a voice came from behind Mara. Enough. Lord Corvin stood in the doorway. Tomas went pale. Corvin's eyes settled on Mara. You have been in the archives. Mara stood. I was looking for medical records. You have no authority. Neither does Pain. Corvin's expression hardened. Mara walked away. That night, Frostfang began scratching at the chapel floor. Mara followed. He stopped beside a sealed stone door. She examined the wall. There was a gap beneath the stone. She pushed. Nothing. Frostfang scratched again. Mara found a hidden latch. The door opened. Cold air poured out. Inside was a chamber untouched for 20 years. Rusty weapons, burned papers, a faded royal banner, and beneath the dust, a broken spearhead. Mara picked it up. The metal was blackened. The shape matched the fragment removed from Frostfang's leg. Her heart raced. She searched the room. A medical ledger lay beneath the banner. She opened it. Her father's handwriting filled the page. Mara read the first line, then the second. Her face went pale. The official story was a lie. Prince Rowan had not died in a bridge collapse.
He had been attacked.
Frostfang had tried to protect him, and her father had treated the beast afterward. Mara turned the page. A floorboard creaked behind her. She spun around. The stone door slammed shut. Darkness swallowed the room. Then footsteps began approaching from the other side. Slow, measured, unhurried. Mara backed away. The footsteps stopped. Someone was standing directly outside the door. Then a key turned in the lock. Mara did not scream. She stood perfectly still. The door opened. But the person outside was not Lord Corvin. It was Frostfang. The beast had somehow followed her through the chapel and now stood in the narrow passage. He lowered his head. Mara rushed toward him. The moment she touched his fur, the door behind them creaked again. She ran. Frostfang turned. His body struck the weakened wooden barrier beside the stone passage. Once.
Twice.
The wood split. Mara crawled through. Frostfang followed. They emerged into the chapel as guards came running. Nobody understood what had happened. Mara understood only one thing. She was no longer safe. The next morning, Lord Corvin accused her publicly. Forbidden healing. Royal trespass. Interference with the king's physician. He spoke calmly. That made it worse. A man shouting could be dismissed as angry. Corvin never raised his voice. He simply placed one accusation after another before the king and waited for Mara to defend herself. King Aldrin listened. Then he looked at Mara. Did you enter the sealed chamber? Yes. Why? Frostfang led me there. Corvin smiled faintly. An animal cannot testify. Mara looked at him.
No.
She glanced at Frostfang. But he can remember. The room became silent. Aldrin ordered the old royal records reopened. For the first time in 20 years, people began asking questions. Who had been present when Rowan died? Who had carried the prince from the battlefield? Who had treated Frostfang? Who had signed the original report? Every answer seemed to lead toward Corvin. Then Mara found the most disturbing evidence. The treatments given to Frostfang after his injury had not been designed to heal him. They had kept him weak. Repeated restraints, incorrect braces, pain suppressants, poorly set support. Someone had ensured that the beast would survive without ever fully recovering.
Why?
Because Frostfang remembered. He had seen the attack. He had been beside Rowan. He was the only living witness who could not be bribed, threatened, or persuaded to forget. Mara understood why the old physicians had failed. They had not been trying to heal him.
Not all of them.
Some had been continuing the same plan. Corvin had controlled the royal infirmary for 20 years. And now Mara had undone what he had carefully maintained. Frostfang was strong again. The truth could move. And Corvin was frightened. That evening Mara found another page hidden inside her father's old medical ledger. The ink had faded, but she could read it. Her father had written that he believed Frostfang's injury was caused by a royal spear. He had attempted to reset the bone. Corvin had ordered him to stop. When her father refused, Corvin threatened Mara.
She was only 4 years old at the time.
Her father had obeyed. The truth struck Mara harder than any accusation. Her father had not abandoned Frostfang. He had been forced to leave him broken. And for 20 years, he had carried that guilt alone. Mara closed the ledger. Tears blurred the page. Frostfang lowered his head beside her. She touched his forehead. I know. The words were barely audible. I know now. The next morning, Mara never reached the king. 2 guards came for her. They said Aldrin wanted to see her, but they took her through the wrong gate. Beyond the fortress, into the forest, Lord Corvin was waiting. Mara understood immediately. You lied. Corvin smiled. You are clever. He took the ledger from her. She tried to grab it. He pulled it away. You have no idea how many people depend upon the old story. Only you.
No.
He looked toward the mountains. Kings depend upon stability. Nobles depend upon silence. Soldiers depend upon orders. He stepped closer. You think truth is always noble? Mara said nothing. Corvin ordered the guards to bind her. They led her toward the old hunting grounds. The snow became deeper. The trees older. The ravine appeared ahead. Mara recognized it. This was where Frostfang had been injured, where Prince Rowan had died. Corvin threw the ledger into a fire. Mara watched the pages burn. You destroyed the evidence. I destroyed paper. He looked at her. Paper is not evidence when everyone agrees to forget. Mara's hands trembled, but she remembered something her father had taught her. When trapped in a forest, do not fight the mountain. Understand it. She looked toward the ravine. The ice beneath the snow was thin. Corvin did not know. Mara began walking. Slowly. She stepped toward the unstable ground. Corvin followed. He did not notice the way she avoided the strongest snow. He did not notice the crack beneath her boot. She reached the center, then stopped. Corvin raised his hand. Mara looked past him. A white shape stood between the trees. Frostfang. The beast stepped forward. One paw, then another. His heeled leg pressed firmly into the snow. Corvin's face changed. For the first time, fear appeared in his eyes. Frostfang stopped between them. The same creature Corvin had spent 20 years keeping weak now stood taller than him. Stronger.
Free.
Remembering. Corvin stepped backward. Frostfang growled. The sound rolled across the mountains. Then, far away, another sound answered.
Horns.
Royal horns. King Aldrin had found them. And this time, he was not coming alone. King Aldrin rode into the hunting grounds with 20 soldiers. Behind him came Tomas and 3 old members of the royal household. Corvin turned toward them. For a moment, nobody moved. Snow fell between them. Aldrin looked at Mara first. Then Frostfang. Then Corvin. His expression was colder than the mountain air. Move away from her. Corvin raised both hands. My king, this woman has deceived you. Aldrin did not answer. Corvin continued. She entered restricted chambers. She stole royal records. She has manipulated the beast. Mara almost laughed. Not because anything was funny, because the lie was so desperate. Frostfang stood beside her. He did not move. Tomas stepped forward. I know this place. Everyone turned. The old servant pointed toward the ravine. Prince Rowan died here. Aldrin's face tightened. That is not what the record says. I know. Tomas looked at Corvin. I was there. Silence. Aldrin turned toward him. What did you see? Tomas's eyes filled with tears. I saw Corvin's men attack the prince. Corvin shouted. He's an old man. Tomas did not stop. I saw Frostfang bite one of the soldiers. His voice broke. I saw the prince fall. He looked at Frostfang. And I saw that beast drag himself through the snow to reach him. Aldrin closed his eyes. The memory was suddenly no longer a story. It was a scene. His brother. The snow.
The blood. The beast.
And the lie that had followed them home. Mara walked toward the ravine. She pointed to the remains of the old bridge. The official story says Frostfang was injured when this collapsed. She crouched. This beam fell here. She pointed. If the bridge collapsed first, his leg would have been crushed from the side. She touched the snow. But the scar begins here. She showed Aldrin the place. The spear entered from behind. Aldrin looked at the old wound. Then at Corvin. Corvin's face had gone white. Mara continued. The metal was still inside him. She held up the spear fragment. The same metal was in the old chamber.
One of the soldiers recognized it.
Those spears belonged to Corvin's guard. Corvin stepped backward. Aldrin stared at him. 20 years.
Corvin said nothing.
20 years, Aldrin repeated. His voice was almost quiet. How many times did you stand beside me while I mourned my brother? Corvin's silence answered. Then he moved. Fast. He lunged toward Mara. Frostfang moved faster. The beasts stepped between them. Corvin stumbled. A soldier caught him.
He fought wildly.
The calm physician disappeared. The real man emerged. You know nothing, he shouted. Aldrin watched. Corvin struggled against the guards. I kept this kingdom alive. You murdered my brother. I saved the throne. The words echoed. There it was. The truth. Not hidden anymore. Not buried. Not protected by old records. Corvin had killed Rowan because he believed Rowan would make a better king. He had injured Frostfang because the beast had witnessed it. And he had controlled the animal's medical treatment for 20 years to ensure the witness remained helpless. Mara watched Corvin being dragged away. She felt no triumph, only exhaustion. The truth had finally arrived, but it had taken 20 years. King Aldrin walked toward Mara. His eyes were wet. Your father knew. Mara nodded.
He tried.
Aldrin looked at Frostfang. He did more than try.
Mara looked down.
My father thought he failed. He did not. Aldrin turned toward the soldiers. Open the archives. Everyone looked at him. Every record of my brother's death.
He paused.
Nothing remained sealed. The order spread through the kingdom. Within weeks, the old conspiracy began collapsing. Nobles were questioned. Records were restored. Corvin was imprisoned. Those who had assisted him lost their titles. Prince Rowan's name was spoken again. Not as a tragedy, as a prince, as a brother, as a man who had been loved. And Frostfang? He became something else. Not a monster, not a relic, a survivor. The people of Bellmere came to see him. Children watched from behind fences. Hunters lowered their weapons. Old women left food near the forest edge. Mara refused every reward. The king offered gold. She declined. He offered land. She declined. Finally, Aldrin asked what she wanted. Mara thought about it. Then she said the only thing she truly wanted. Protect the forest. The king waited. Don't kill animals because they are inconvenient. Aldrin nodded. And injured animals? Treat them.
So he did.
The northern forest became protected ground. A royal animal infirmary was established. Mara was offered a place there. She hesitated. She had always belonged to the forest, not to marble halls, not to royal tables, not to court politics. But when she prepared to leave, Frostfang followed her into the courtyard. He walked beside her, without a limp. The morning sun touched his white fur. Mara stopped. He stopped too. For a moment, she simply looked at him. 20 years. 20 years of pain. 20 years of being remembered as broken. And now he stood beneath the golden light like the past had finally loosened its grip. Mara smiled. Then she noticed something beneath his collar. A small silver token. She touched it. The crest of Prince Rowan was carved into the metal. Mara's smile disappeared. The prince had left something behind. And Frostfang had carried it for 20 years. The kingdom changed slowly. That was the only way real change ever came. Not with one speech. Not with one royal order, but with hundreds of small decisions made by people who had finally learned to look differently. Hunters began bringing wounded animals instead of finishing them. Children were taught not to throw stones at foxes caught near their homes. Old horses were given shelter instead of being abandoned when their legs weakened. The royal infirmary changed too. Mara refused to let anyone call what she had done with Frostfang a miracle. Miracles are easy to admire. she once told a young apprentice. Care is harder. The apprentice remembered those words. So did the kingdom. Mara eventually returned to Bellmere. Her father's cottage stood at the edge of the village. The roof leaked. The windows were cracked. The old wooden sign outside had faded until only one word remained visible. Healer. Mara repaired the roof. Then the windows. Then the shelves. She cleaned the old work table where her father had once prepared medicines. Some nights she sat there alone. The fire burned low. Snow tapped softly against the glass. And she remembered his hands, his voice, the things he had tried to teach her. For years, she had thought he had died believing he was a failure. Now she understood differently. He had been forced to stop, but he had passed the knowledge forward. He had trusted her without knowing she would one day finish what he could not. The cottage became a refuge. A farmer brought an injured dog. Mara treated it. A shepherd brought a fox caught in a trap. She freed it. A child arrived carrying a bird with a broken wing. Mara showed the child how to hold it. Slowly, the cottage filled with life. And sometimes, when the evening light turned the forest blue, Frostfang appeared. He never entered the cottage. He did not need to. He would sit beneath the old pine outside. Mara would see him through the window, and she would smile. He was no longer dependent upon her. That mattered. He could climb again, run again,
Cross streams.
travel through deep snow. He had become himself again. Or perhaps he had become someone new. The silver token remained beneath his collar. Mara eventually learned where it came from. Prince Rowan had given it to Frostfang shortly before his death. Not as a royal symbol, as a promise. The token had belonged to Rowan since childhood. On its back were 2 words. Remember me. Mara held it in her palm for a long time. Then she understood. Frostfang had not carried the token because he was trained to obey. He carried it because he had remembered. He had remembered the prince, the attack, the betrayal, the hands that hurt him, the hand that finally helped him. 20 years of memory lived inside one old beast. And Mara had mistaken the limp for the whole story. It had never been the whole story. The first winter after the kingdom changed, Mara walked into the forest alone. Snow had begun falling. The same soft snow that had covered Frostfang's tracks 20 years earlier. She followed the old path, past the frozen stream, past the dead pine, up toward the hill above Bellmere. Frostfang was waiting. He stood beneath the trees. Older now, his muzzle almost entirely white, his body thinner, his movements slower. But when he stepped forward, all 4 paws landed evenly. No drag, no hesitation. Mara smiled. You came. Frostfang approached. He lowered his head. His nose touched her shoulder. She placed both hands against his fur. The forest was silent around them. No soldiers. No king. No court. No accusations. Only snow. Wind. Breathing. Mara looked toward the mountains. You should go. Frostfang lifted his head. She swallowed. I know. Her voice broke slightly. You don't belong to me. The beast looked at her for a long moment. Then he turned.
He walked toward the mountains.
1 step. Then another. Mara watched. He reached the edge of the trees.
Stopped.
Looked back. For a moment, their eyes met. Mara raised one hand. Frostfang lowered his head. Then he disappeared into the snow. She stood there long after he was gone. Tears warmed her cheeks. But she did not call him back. Because sometimes love meant holding on. And sometimes love meant opening your hand. Years passed. The story became a legend. Travelers who came through Bellmere heard about the white beast. Children heard that he had once limped for 20 years. They heard that royal healers had failed. They heard that a poor village girl had fixed him in one afternoon. They always asked the same question.
How?
Mara never answered. Some said she possessed magic. Some said her father had taught her a forbidden royal technique. Some claimed she could speak to wolves. Others believed Frostfang had chosen her because she carried the blood of an ancient healer. Mara allowed them to believe whatever they wished. She knew the truth. It was quieter, less dramatic, more difficult. She had looked at an injured creature and refused to see him as useless. She had listened. She had waited. She had remembered what others had forgotten. And, because she did, a creature who had spent 20 years carrying pain finally walked into the mountains without it. One spring morning, an old shepherd returned from the northern ridge with strange news. He had seen a white wolf, far above the tree line, standing on 4 strong legs, watching the valley. Mara climbed the ridge alone. The wind was warm. Snow remained only in the shadows. The valley below was green again. Bellmere looked small. The healing cottage stood at its edge. Smoke rose from the chimney. Mara placed one hand against the old wooden door. Then she looked toward the mountains. Nothing. Only clouds. She smiled and turned back. High above her, beyond the last line of trees, a white shape stood on a distant ridge. Frostfang. Older, slower, but standing straight, balanced on all 4 legs. The moon rose behind him. For a moment, he looked down toward the valley, toward the small cottage, toward the woman who had once knelt beside him in the snow. Then he lowered his head.
Once.
A final farewell, and turned toward the wild. Mara never saw him again, but she did not need to, because for 20 years, the mountain had remembered a broken trail. Now it remembered something else. 4 clean footprints in the snow, one after another, leading home. And perhaps that was the greatest miracle of all. Not that Mara had healed a beast. Not that she had uncovered a murder. Not that a forgotten prince had finally received justice. It was that something everyone had accepted as broken had been given one more chance. And when that chance came, it had not needed a king. It had not needed gold. It had not needed magic. It had only needed one person willing to kneel in the snow and listen. The white beast had limped for 20 years, but he did not die limping. He walked, and somewhere beyond the mountains, beneath the endless northern sky, he kept walking.
Free.